Hello, here is my first video in a bunch of series of videos for Windows Server 2016. In this video we'll start to create a forest. I might not be able to do it in this one video, so I might have to break it into two. But what I've done so far is on my Windows 10 home computer with Oracle's VirtualBox, I've created two virtual machines with Windows Server 2016 and the desktop experience feature. Each of those VMs have two NICs, one for the public internet and one for the private lab. The main reason for this is so I can transfer files from my desktop or do Windows updates or something like that. For DC, of course, you never want public access to a DC. What we're planning to do here, so we've created a plan for the Victoria office. We'll use this subnet, and this will be for computers and servers and phones, but you'd want to do that differently in your production, of course. For a different office, a different site, we'll use a different subnet. To begin, we'll have to verify that the network is up and running between the two VMs, and then from there we can install the Active Directory Services role on two servers. And if we can, we'll promote a domain controller to the first, domain controller in the forest. So we'll jump right in here and we'll try to implement what we see here. So this lab.local domain for this site and the two domain controllers. So we'll jump right into that now. And here we can see we have two DCs, two member servers. Actually, no, they're not even member servers yet. They're just standalone servers. They have been named already, DC2, and in the background DC1. And I have done some of the network configuration already, and I'll show you that right now. So here, because there's two different NICs, I've named them for my use, so I remember. Because I don't want the internet access on this potential domain controller, I'm just going to disable that. Actually, before I do, just to show you. Oops. So there we can ping it using the internet, and when I disable that NIC, the internet goes away. And my next test here, we'll see the IP configuration is 192.168.10.2, and that gateway is not correct, but that doesn't matter for now anyways. So the other DC, DC2, is one higher, 10.3. So that's not going to work just yet because by default the firewall doesn't permit it. So we have to create or enable a rule that already exists for us. And we'll just keep this going here. So it's called File and Printer Sharing Echo Request ICMPv4, and it's on all profiles, so any NIC, enable rule, and then the pings start working. A little bit of a delay there, but it should work. And we'll do the same thing in the opposite direction, because they need to talk both ways. Doesn't work there, so again, it's not there anymore. And we'll enable that. Oops, and pings should start working here. Yep. Wonder if that's a display issue or something here. Yeah, something is odd happening there. Oh, there we go. Okay, so we have network connectivity between the two, so we should be able to start adding the roles and features. So to do that, we go up to the dashboard, add roles and features. Next. We want to install it on this server. This is an old information that hasn't been refreshed yet. Ignore that. And we need the domain services role. It will install these additional features and tools, which is what we want. We'll add DHCP server in maybe 2 or 3 videos. We want those features. I'm just going to skip through it because this is pretty basic stuff. Most IT guys know about that. Okay, now I'll pause it and I'll do the same thing on the other second server and come back when the first one's complete. Okay, so the installation has completed. So we got some time left. I want to keep it under 10 minutes if I can. So the next step to creating a forest is to promote this server to a domain controller. So there's an easy link here, promote to domain controller, and here we have to give a bit of information. So we want the domain to be called lab.local, and I'm just following along my plan here. Lab.local is our root domain, and we'll click next. And we do want it to have DNS, so it will also install this role. We do want this to be a global catalog server, and in order to plan for disaster recovery, we need this to be we need this password, and you need to be able to keep this password. You can always reset it later too, but it is very important in your planning, and I'll try and demonstrate how to recover from a disaster as well in some later passwords. So this is a directory services recovery mode password, top secret, and I'll just keep that for my notes for later on, and as a little reminder not to forget about it. Okay, there's that. Confirm, next. DNS, okay, and we can pretty much continue on here. So this process just took a second. It did a query to try and find out if there was an available NetBIOS name. So I'll just accept that default. And I'm going to accept the default path here for the database and logging location. If you have a very large environment, you might want to use a different disk for these to try and maximize your disk I/O. But for lab, this is just fine. And in your disaster recovery guide, you'd want to document this as well, because that could play an important role as well, where that location is. And we can just click on next on the rest of the installation, so we'll do that and pause it when it's needed, and we'll come back to it later. On the second DC, we can see it's completed as well, but we'll wait until the initial forest is created and rebooted and all that stuff. So these here are just generic warnings, and I know they're safe to ignore at this point anyways. Yeah, be back in a minute. Okay, I stepped away for a minute and I'm back. So the installation has completed of the the DC promote, and if we notice here, we can only log into the lab domain as the administrator. That's very important because on a domain controller there is no local user account, and I'll show you. And the password has been the username and password has been inherited from when it was just a standalone server. So to compare, we'll load up the computer management on this standalone computer and go to local users and groups, because there are local users and groups. And if we do the same thing on the DC, we'll just wait for that to load. Still loading. Okay, so here we can see in the same management console there is no local users and computers because that feature has been removed. There is no local user account on the domain controller, with the exception of when you go into Active Directory Services Restore Mode. When you go into the Active Directory Restore Mode, you need that password that you set in the previous step just a minute or two ago, because when you go into that restore mode, you can't log into the domain because the domain service isn't running, it isn't available. So the restore mode feature re-enables a local administrator account with that password that you set up. So it's very important that you have that password, otherwise you can't restore your domain. So that's going to conclude our video for this. And we have created a domain, and just to confirm, we can see the role is installed here. If we go into local servers, we'll see that we are now in the lab.local domain. So we're pretty much done. The next video will be to get DC2 onto the same domain, and then we'll poke around in sites and services, set up a subnet, and rename the default site. Okay, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.